Hey everyone, welcome to episode 16 of the Resonant Blade Devlog series. I've been focused on trying to nail down the player's first experience with the game, especially since the explanations and tutorials for gameplay mechanics were not really that clear before. With a new intro level that gets the player right into the action and better explanations of the gameplay, I think these new updates help hook the player into the game and leave them wanting more. For this new intro scene, I worked on the ambience and environment effects to try and make it dark and ominous. I added some textured dark clouds as a particle system. These clouds light up with random lightning strikes in the background. I also made a new rain generation system. With a bit of collision logic, I made it to where the raindrops will sometimes hit the ground and turn into a splash effect. I also made random lightning strikes that light up the entire screen. To help put the player in the context of a war zone, I added ships fighting in the background and also shadows of ships flying overhead. In the starting zone, I created little tutorial hints that pop up on screen to help guide the player and explain some of the controls and gameplay. These hollow hints will only pop up if the player scans them. I also made two different sprites that will dynamically switch based on the player's input type, whether that's a controller or a keyboard and mouse. I created various cutscenes to help explain some of the story behind Resonant Blade. The first scene I added shows a couple of sniper bots being shot down by your assault dropship. Shortly after this, you'll see a scene where Commander Dorian fights his way through a group of enemies only to get killed by a giant automaton destroyer. To block the path to the giant automaton after Dorian dies, I made a ship that gets shot down and crashes into the bridge. I added in some particle effects for the smoke, the bridge rubble, and impact explosion, and then combined that with some screen shake and screen flash. I wanted to make a short cutscene for when the player faces the first group of enemies. So after picking up the Resonant Blade, when the player walks back towards the walkway, I made the camera shift over and added some crawler enemies that come from under the walkway, jumping on some soldiers and killing them. The soldier closest to the player drops a hollow hint which shows the player how to attack. There's also another hollow hint closer to the middle that tells the player how to cycle through frequencies, which they'll need to do in order to defeat the last two crawlers. When trying to get back into the dropship to leave the skybase, the player will be confronted by a sword fighter who flies in on a jetpack. This enemy will have a magenta resonant tone, a tone that the Resonant Blade cannot switch to yet because it was damaged from the destroyer blast earlier. For this fight, Atlas has to lose. I made it so that Atlas's health will stop at 1 hit point. After this, I added a flying automaton that swoops in to save the day. This little bot actually decides to help you instead of killing you. I'm planning on having it become your companion at a later point in the game. This is the end of the scene where Atlas just blacks out and then reawakens back in Proto Labs. I also wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the enemies that I've been working on. I showed the crawlers from before. These enemies just chase the player and can do a jump attack. They're easy to kill and help to teach the player the basics of switching tones on the Resonant Blade. Another enemy I've been working on that doesn't show up in this scene is this guy. It's an armored automaton equipped with a hollow shield. They use their shield to block attacks from the player. Their shields will be set to a specific resonant tone. The player will be able to damage and eventually disable the shield. Hitting the shield with the incorrect frequency will stun the player for a short time, while the shield bot counters with the bash attack. After being disabled, the hollow shield will reactivate after a few seconds. The player will be able to deal damage with any resonant tone while the shields are down. An alternative way to fight these enemies is to dash behind them and attack from behind. The shield bots can also place force fields on other enemies. For the sword fighters, I added a way in which the player can stun them. Hitting a sword fighter with the correct resonant frequency shortly after a successful parry will stun them for a short time, where they'll be vulnerable to all attacks. I also made some improvements to the dialogue system. Before, using Unity's text component, I was adding individual characters to an NPC's dialogue. This would ignore the text wrapping, and I would get things like this. Switching the dialogue over to Text Mesh Pro, I was able to access the visibility of each character. So basically, I could have the entire dialogue of text set beforehand with the appropriate text wrapping, and then reveal one character at a time. Another small upgrade to the dialogue is the addition of a choice tree. There are a couple of NPCs in this area with quests that are completely optional. Bringing this soldier some nanites will cure him, and he'll show up on your ship when going to leave. If you leave and don't give him the nanites, he'll bleed out and die. The other quest NPC is a pilot with a damaged ship. Bringing her some ship parts will fix her ship, allowing her to escape from the skybase. I'm planning on having these NPCs appear back at the Citadel to offer the player rewards, assuming that you help them. Alright, that's it for this episode. I just need to add in some more sound effects for this scene and a little bit of polish, and it should be all finished. Afterwards, I can start building out some more of Locria City and start adding some story and questing elements and enemies there. As always, thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you next time.